Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Kallipolis Radio. Today, I'll be reading the Analects of Confucius. Thanks for listening. The master said, "Isn't it a pleasure to study and practice what you have learned? Isn't it also great when friends visit from distant places? If people do not recognize me, and it doesn't bother me, am I not a nobleman?" Yu Ji said, "There are few who have developed themselves filially and fraternally who enjoy offending their superiors. Those who do not enjoy offending superiors are never troublemakers. The noble man concerns himself with the fundamentals. Once the fundamentals are established, the proper way appears. Are not filial piety and obedience to elders fundamental to the actualization of fundamental human goodness?" The master said, "Someone who is eloquent and maintains a contrived smile is seldom considered to be a really good person." Seng Ji said, "Each day I examine myself in 3 ways. In doing things for others, have I been disloyal? In my interactions with friends, have I been untrustworthy? Have I not practiced what I have preached?" The master said, "If you would govern a state of 1,000 chariots, you must pay strict attention to business, be true to your word, be economical in expenditure, and love the people. You should employ them appropriately, according to the seasons." The master said, "A young man should serve his parents at home, and be respectful to elders outside his home. He should be earnest and truthful, loving all, but become intimate with his innate good-heartedness. After doing this, if he has energy to spare, he can study literature and the arts." Zhi Zia said, "If you can treat the worthy as worthy without strain, exert your utmost in serving your parents, devote your whole self in serving your prince, and be honest in speech when dealing with your friends. If you do this and someone says that you are not learned, I would say that you are definitely learned." The master said, "If the nobleman lacks gravitas, then he will not inspire awe in others. If you study, you will not be stubborn. Take loyalty and good faith to be of primary importance, and have no friends who are not of equal moral caliber. When you make a mistake, don't hesitate to correct it." Cheng Ji said, "When they are careful about their parents, to the end, and continue in reverence after their parents are long gone, the virtue of the people will return to its natural depth." Ji Qin asked Ji Gong, "When our teacher, Confucius, arrives in any country, he invariably finds out everything about its government. Does he seek this information, or is it given to him?" Ji Gong said, "Our teacher gets it by being cordial, upright, courteous, frugal, and humble. His way of getting information is quite different from that of other men." The master said, "When your father is alive, observe his will. When your father is dead, observe his former actions. If, for 3 years, you do not change from the ways of your father, you can be called a real son." Yu Ji said, "In the actual practice of propriety, flexibility is important. This is what the ancient kings did so well. Both the greater and the lesser used flexibility. Yet there are occasions when this does not apply. If you understand flexibility and use it, but don't structure yourself with propriety, things won't go well." Yu Ji said, "When your own trustworthiness is guided by fairness, your words can be followed. When your show of respect is guided by propriety, you will be far from shame and disgrace. If you have genuine affection within your family, you can become an ancestor." The master said, "When the nobleman eats, he does not try to stuff himself. At rest, he does not seek perfect comfort. He is diligent in his work and careful in speech. He avails himself to people of the way, and thereby corrects himself. This is the kind of person of whom you can say, 'He loves learning.'" Ji Gong asked, "What do you think of a poor man who doesn't grovel, or a rich man who isn't proud?" Confucius said, "They are good, but not as good as a poor man who is satisfied, and a rich man who loves propriety. Zhi Gong said, "The Book of Odes says, like cutting and filing, grinding and polishing." Is this what you are talking about? Confucius said, "Ah, now I can begin to discuss the Book of Odes with Xi. I speak of various things, and he knows what is to be brought back." The master said, "I am not bothered by the fact that I am unknown. I am bothered when I do not know others." The master said, "If you govern with the power of your virtue, you will be like the North Star. It just stays in its place while all other stars position themselves around it." The master said, "The 300 verses of the Book of Odes can be summed up in a single phrase. Do not think in an evil way." The master said, "If you govern the people legalistically and control them by punishment, they will avoid crime, yet have no personal sense of shame. If you govern them by means of virtue and control them with propriety, they will gain their own sense of shame, and thus correct themselves." The master said, "At 15 my heart was set on learning. At 30 I stood firm. At 40 I was unperturbed. At 50 I knew the mandate of heaven. At 60 my ear was obedient. At 70 I could follow my heart's desire without transgressing the norm." Meng Yi Ji asked about the meaning of filial piety. Confucius said, "It means not diverging from your parents." Later, when Fan Qi was driving him, Confucius told Fan Qi, "Meng Sun asked me about the meaning of filial piety, and I told him not diverging." Fan Qi said, "What do you mean by that?" Confucius said, "When your parents are alive, serve them with propriety. When they die, bury them with propriety, and then worship them with propriety." Meng Wu Bo asked about the meaning of filial piety. Confucius said, "The main concern of your parents is about your health." Zhi Yu asked about the meaning of filial piety. Confucius said, "Nowadays, filial piety means being able to feed your parents. But everyone does this for even horses and dogs. Without respect, what's the difference?" Zi Jia asked about filial piety. Confucius said, "What is important is the expression you show in your face. You should not understand filial to mean merely the young doing physical tasks for their parents, or giving them food and wine when it is available." The master said, "I can talk with Hui for a whole day without him differing with me in any way, as if he is stupid, but once he retires and I observe his personal affairs, it is quite clear that he is not stupid." The master said, "See a person's means of getting things. Observe their motives. Examine that in which they rest. How can a person conceal their character? How can a person conceal their character?" The master said, "Reviewing what you have learned and learning anew, you are fit to be a teacher." The master said, "The noble man is not a utensil." Zhi Gong asked about the character of the noble man. Confucius said, "First he practices what he preaches, and then he follows it." The master said, "The noble man is all-embracing and not partial. The inferior man is partial and not all-embracing." The master said, "To study and not think is a waste. To think and not study is dangerous." The master said, "To throw oneself into strange teachings is quite dangerous." The master said, "You, shall I teach you about knowledge? What you know, you know. What you don't know, you don't know. This is knowledge." Zi Jiang was studying to get an upgrade in his civil service rank. Advising him about self-improvement, Confucius said, "Listen widely to remove your doubts, and be careful when speaking about the rest, and your mistakes will be few. See much and get rid of what is dangerous, and be careful in acting on the rest, and your causes for regret will be few. Speaking without fault, acting without causing regret. Upgrading consists in this. The Duke of Ai asked, "How can I make the people follow me?" Confucius replied, "Advance the upright and set aside the crooked, and the people will follow you. Advance the crooked and set aside the upright, and the people will not follow you." Ji Kangji asked, "How can I make the people reverent and loyal, so they will work positively for me?" Confucius said, "Approach them with dignity, and they will be reverent. Be filial and compassionate, and they will be loyal. Promote the able and teach the incompetent, and they will work positively for you." Someone asked Confucius, "Why are you not involved in government?" Confucius said, "What does the book of history say about filial piety? Just by being a good son and friendly to one's brothers and sisters, you can have an effect on government. Since this is also doing government, why do I need to do doing government?" The master said, "If a person lacks trustworthiness, I don't know what he can be good for when a pin is missing from the yoke bar of a large wagon, or from the collar bar of a small wagon. How can it go?" Zhi Zhang asked whether the state of affairs of 10 generations hence could be known. Confucius said, "The Shang based its propriety on that of the Yin, and what it added and subtracted is knowable. The Zhu has based its propriety on that of the Shang, and what it added and subtracted is knowable. In this way, what continues from the Zhu, even if 100 generations hence, is knowable." The master said, "To worship to other than one's own ancestral spirits is flattery. If you see what is right and fail to act on it, you lack courage." Confucius, speaking about the head of the Qi family, said, "He has 8 rows of dancers in his court. If he does this, what will he not do?" The 3 families used the Yang songs at the clearing of the sacrificial vessels. Confucius said, "Attended on by lords and princes, how magnificent is the Son of Heaven!" How could these words be used in the halls of the 3 families? The master said, "If a man has no ren, what can his propriety be like? If a man has no ren, what can his music be like?" Lin Fang asked about the fundamentals of ritual. Confucius said, "What an excellent question. In ritual, it is better to be frugal than extravagant. In funerals, deep sorrow is better than ease." The master said, "The tribes of the east and north, though having kings, are not equal to our people, even when lacking kings." The Ji family went to make a sacrifice at Mount Tai. The master said to Ran Yu, "Can't you save them from this?" Yu responded, "I can't." The master said, "Alas, does this mean that Mount Tai is not the equal of Lin Fang?" The master said, "The noble man has nothing to compete for, but if he must compete, he does it in an archery match, wherein he ascends to his position, bowing in deference. Descending, he drinks the ritual cup. This is the competition of a noble man." Zi Jia quoted the following, "Her tactful smile charms, her eyes fine and clear, beautiful without accessories," and asked its meaning. Confucius said, "A painting is done on plain white paper." Zhi Jia said, "Then are rituals a secondary thing?" Confucius said, "Ah, Shang, you uplift me. Now we can really begin to discuss the Book of Odes." The master said, "At the great sacrifice, after the pouring of the libation, I have no further desire to watch." Someone asked for an explanation of the great sacrifice. Confucius said, "I don't know. If there were someone who knew this, he could see the whole world as if it were this, and he pointed to the palm of his hand. Sacrificing as if present means sacrificing to the spirits as if they were present. Confucius said, "If I do not personally offer the sacrifice, it is the same as not having sacrificed at all." Wang Sun-jia asked, "What do you think about the saying, 'It is better to sacrifice to the god of the stove than the god of the family shrine'?" Confucius said, "Not so. If you offend heaven, there is no one you can pray to." The master said, "The people of the Zhou were able to observe the prior two dynasties, and thus their culture flourished. I now follow the Zhou." When Confucius entered the Grand Temple, he asked about everything. Someone said, "Who said Confucius is a master of ritual? He enters the Grand Temple and asks about everything." Confucius, on hearing this, said, "This is the ritual." The master said, "In archery, it is not important to pierce through the leather covering of the target, since not all men have the same strength. This is the way of the ancients." Zhi Gong wanted to do away with the sacrifice of sheep on the 1st of the month. Confucius said, "Shi, you love the sheep. I love the ceremony." The master said, "If you use every single courtesy while serving your prince, the people will call you a sycophant." Duke Ding asked how a ruler should employ his ministers, and how a minister should serve his ruler. Confucius replied, saying, "The prince employs his ministers with propriety. The ministers serve their prince with good faith." The master said, "The Guanju allows for pleasure without being lewd, and allows for grief without being too painful." The Duke of Ai asked Zai Wo about sacred temple grounds. Zai Wo said, "The Jia Emperor planted them with pines. The Jiang people planted them with cypress, and the Zhou people planted them with chestnut, thinking to cause people to be in awe of these trees." Confucius, hearing this, said, "Don't bother explaining that which has already been done. Don't bother criticizing that which is already gone. Don't bother blaming that which is already past." The master said, "Guanzhong was quite limited in capacity." Someone asked, "Wasn't Guanzhong frugal?" Confucius said, "Guan had 3 sets of wives, and his officers never worked overtime. How can he be considered to have been frugal?" But then, did Guanzhong understand propriety? Confucius said, "The princes of the states have a special ritual screen at their door, and so did Guanzhong, even though he was not of the proper rank to do this. When the princes of state had a friendly meeting, they would ritually turn their cups over on the table. Guan also turned his cups over on the table. If Guanzhong understood propriety, then who doesn't?" Confucius, when talking with the Grand Music Master of Lu, said, "In my understanding of music, the piece should be begun in unison. Afterwards, if it is pure, clear, and without break, it will be perfect." The border guard at Yi requested an audience with the master, saying, "Whenever a noble man comes here, I never miss the opportunity to see him." The disciples sent him in. When he came out, he said, "Friends, don't have any doubts about your master failing. The world has certainly lacked the way for a long time now, but heaven will use your master to awaken everyone." The master said, "Men of high office who are narrow-minded, propriety without respect, and funerals without grief. How can I bear to look at such things?" The master said, "As for a neighborhood, it is its wren that makes it beautiful. If you choose to live in a place that lacks wren, how can you grow in wisdom?" The master said, "If you lack wren, you can't handle long periods of difficulty. or long periods of comfort. Humane men are comfortable in Ren. The wise take advantage of Ren. The Master said, only the humane person is able to really like others, or to really dislike them. The Master said, if you are really committed to Ren, you will not have resentments. Confucius said, riches and honors are what all men desire, but if they cannot be attained in accordance with the way, they should not be kept. Poverty and low status are what all men hate, but if they cannot be avoided while staying in accordance with the way, you should not avoid them. If a nobleman departs from his fundamental goodness, how can he be worthy of that name? A noble man never leaves his fundamental goodness for even the time of a single meal. In moments of haste, he acts according to it. In times of difficulty or confusion, he acts according to it. The Master said, I have never seen one who really loves Ren, or really hates non-Ren. If you really loved Ren, you would not place anything above it. If you really hated the non-Ren, you would not let it near you. Is there anyone who has devoted his strength to Ren for a single day? I have not seen anyone who has lacked the strength to do so. Perhaps there has been such a case, but I have never seen it. The Master said, people err according to their own level. It is by observing a person's mistakes that you can know his or her goodness. The Master said, if I can hear the way in the morning, in the evening I can die content. A she who is set on the way, but is ashamed of old clothes and coarse food, is not worth consulting. The Master said, when the noble man deals with the world, he is not prejudiced for or against anything. He does what is right. The Master said, the noble man cares about virtue. The inferior man cares about material things. The noble man seeks discipline. The inferior man seeks favors. The Master said, if you do everything with a concern for your own advantage, you will be resented by many people. The Master said, if you can govern the country by putting propriety first, what else will you need to do? If you can't govern your country by putting propriety first, how could you even call it propriety? The Master said, I don't worry about not having a good position. I worry about the means I use to gain position. I don't worry about being unknown. I seek to be known in the right way. The Master said, Shan, my way is penetrated by a single thread. Cheng Ji said, yes. When the Master left, some disciples asked what he meant. Cheng Ji said, our Master's way is to be loyal and have a sense of reciprocity, and that is it. The Master said, the noble man is aware of fairness. The inferior man is aware of advantage. The Master said, when you see a good person, think of becoming like her or him. When you see someone not so good, reflect on your own weak points. The Master said, when you serve your mother and father, it is okay to try to correct them once in a while. But if you see that they are not going to listen to you, keep your respect for them and don't distance yourself from them. Work without complaining. The Master said, while your parents are alive, it is better not to travel far away. If you do travel, you should have a precise destination. The Master said, if, for 3 years, after your father's death, you don't alter his ways of doing things, you certainly can be called filial. The master said, "Your parents' age should not be ignored. Sometimes it will be a source of joy, and sometimes it will be a source of apprehension." The master said, "The ancients were hesitant to speak, fearing that their actions would not do justice to their words." The master said, "If you are strict with yourself, your mistakes will be few." The master said, "The noble man desires to be hesitant in speech, but sharp in action." The master said, "If you are virtuous, you will not be lonely. You will always have friends." Zi said, "In serving your prince, frequent remonstrance will lead to disgrace. With friends, frequent remonstrance will lead to separation." Confucius said of Gong Yi Chang that he was fit for marriage. Even though he was arrested once, he had been innocent. Therefore, Confucius gave him his daughter in marriage. Confucius said of Nan Yong that if the Wei prevailed in the state, he would never lack an official post. If the Wei was lacking in the state, he would avoid getting into trouble. He gave him the daughter of his own elder brother in marriage. Confucius said of Zi Jian, "He is a noble man. If the state of Lu is really lacking superior men, how could he have acquired such a character?" Zi Gong asked, "What do you say of me?" Confucius said, "You are a vessel." "What kind of vessel?" "A gemmed, sacrificial vessel." Someone said, "Yang is a Ren man, but he is not eloquent." Confucius said, "Why does he need to be eloquent? If you deal with people by smooth talk, you will soon be disliked. I don't know if Yang is a Ren man, but why should he have to be a good speaker?" Confucius encouraged Qi Diao Kai to get employment as an official. He replied, "I am not yet sincere enough." The master was pleased. The master said, "The way is not practiced. I shall go ride a raft on the ocean, and I imagine you would go with me." Zi Lu was very happy to hear this. Confucius said, "Yu likes daring more than I, but he lacks discretion." Meng Wu Bo asked Confucius whether Zi Lu was a Ren man. Confucius said, "I don't know." He asked again. Confucius said, "You could direct the public works forces in a state of 1,000 chariots, but I don't know if I would call him a Ren man." Meng asked again, "What about Q?" Confucius said, "Q could be the governor of a city of 1,000 families, or of a clan of 100 chariots, but I don't know if he is a Ren man." Meng asked, "What about Qi?" The master said, "Dressed up with his sash, placed in the middle of the court, he could make conversation with the guests, but I don't know if he is a Ren man." Confucius, speaking to Zi Gong, said, "Who is superior, you or Hui?" Zi Gong answered, saying, "How could I compare myself to Hui? He hears one point and understands the whole thing. I hear one point and understand a second one." Confucius said, "You are not equal to him, you and I. We are not equal to him." Zai Yu slept during the daytime. Confucius said, "Rotten wood cannot be carved. Dirty earth cannot be used for cement. Why bother scolding him? At first I used to listen to what people said and expected them to act accordingly. Now I listen to what people say and watch what they do. I learned this from you." The master said, "I have not yet met a really solid man." Someone said, "What about Shan Cheng?" Confucius said, Cheng is ruled by lust. How could he be solid? Zi Gong said, What I don't want done to me, I don't want to do to others. Confucius said, Shi, you have not yet gotten to this level. Zi Gong said, What our master has to say about the classics can be heard and also embodied. Our master's words on the essence and the heavenly way, though not attainable, can be heard. When Zi Lu heard a teaching and had not yet put it into practice, he would be apprehensive about hearing something new in the meantime. Zi Gong asked, How did Kong Weng Zi get the title Wen? Confucius said, He was diligent and loved to study. He was also unashamed to ask questions to his inferiors. Therefore, he got the name Wen. Confucius said that Zi Chan had 4 characteristics of the noble man. In his private conduct, he was courteous. In serving superiors, he was respectful. In providing for people, he was kind. In employing the people, he was fair. The master said, Yan Ping Zhong was good at getting along with people. Even after a long period of acquaintance, he would continue to treat them with respect. Zi Zhang asked, The chief minister, Zi Wen, was appointed 3 times, but never showed any sign of pleasure. He was fired 3 times, but never showed any sign of disappointment. He would always inform the incoming minister on all the details of the prior government. What do you think of him? Confucius said, He was loyal. Was he humane? Confucius said, I don't know what he did to deserve to be called humane. Zi Zhang asked again, When Qiu Zi assassinated the prince of Qi, Chan Wen Zi, who had a fief of 10 chariots, abandoned them and left the state. Arriving to another state, he said, The government here is just like that of the officer Qiu Zi, and he left it. Coming to another state, he said, They are again just like the officer Qiu Zi, and he left. What do you think of him? Confucius said, He was pure. Was he humane? I don't know what he did to merit being called humane. Ji Wenzi contemplated something 3 times before acting upon it. When Confucius heard this, he said, Twice is enough. The master said, When the Wei prevailed in the state, Ningwu Zi showed his intelligence. When the Wei declined in the state, he played stupid. Some might be able to match his intelligence, but no one can match his stupidity. Once, when Confucius was in Chen, he said, I must return. My young disciples are wild and unbridled. Though they are developing well, they don't always know when to restrain themselves. The master said, Bo Yi and Shu Qi did not keep others' former wrongdoings in mind, and so there was little resentment against them. The master said, Who said that Wai Shangao is of a straight character? Someone begged vinegar from him, and he went and got some from his neighbors and gave it to him. The master said, Clever words, a pretentious face, and too perfect courtesy. Zhou Qiuming was ashamed of them. I also am ashamed of them. Concealing one's resentments and acting friendly to people. Zhou Qiuming was ashamed to act this way, and so am I. Yan Yuan and Zi Lu were by the master's side. He said to them, Why don't each of you tell me of your aspirations? Zi Lu said, I would like to have wagons, horses, and light fur coats to give to my friends, and if they damage them, not to get angry. Yan Yuan said, I would like not to be proud of my good points, and not show off my works. Zi Lu said, "What are your wishes, teacher?" Confucius said, "I would like to give comfort to the aged, trust to my friends, and nurturance to the young." The master said, "It's all over. I have not yet met someone who can see his own faults and correct them within himself." The master said, "In a hamlet of 10 families, there must be someone as loyal and trustworthy as I, but I doubt there will be someone as fond of study." The master said, "Yang could fulfill the role of facing south." Zhang Gong asked about Zisang Bozi. Confucius said, "He will do. He is easygoing." Zhang Gong said, "Maybe if you are easygoing, but abide in reverence, it is all right. But if you abide in easygoingness, and are also easygoing in your activities, wouldn't that be excessive?" Confucius said, "Yang is right." The Duke of Ai asked which disciple loved to study. Confucius answered, "There was Yan Hui. He loved to study. He didn't transfer his anger to the wrong person, and he didn't repeat his mistakes. Unfortunately, he died young. Since then, I have not yet met anyone who loves to study the way that he did." Confucius, speaking of Zhang Gong, said, "The calf of a bridled ox could be all red and have good horns. But even if we decide not to use it, would nature cast it away?" The master said, "Hui could keep his mind on Ren for 3 months without lapse. Others are lucky if they can do it for 1 day out of a month." Ji Kangji asked whether Zhang Yu was capable of serving in the government. Confucius said, "Yu is efficient. What problem could he have in handling government work?" Kang asked, "Is Qi capable of serving in the government?" Confucius said, "Qi is intelligent. What problem could he have in handling government work?" "And what about Q?" Confucius said, "Q is talented. What difficulty would he have in handling government work?" The head of the Qi family sent to Ming Ziqian to ask him to govern Pi for them. Min Ziqian said, "Please decline for me politely. If they pursue me further, I shall have to go live on the banks of the Wen River." Bon Yu was sick, and Confucius came to see him. He held his hand through the window and said, "He is dying. How awful it is that this kind of man should be sick like this. How awful it is that this kind of man should be sick like this." The master said, "Hui was indeed a worthy. With a single bamboo bowl of rice and gourd cup of water, he lived in a back alley. Others could not have endured his misery, but Hui never changed from his happy disposition. Hui was a worthy indeed." Yen Qiu said, "It is not that I don't enjoy your way, but my strength is not enough." Confucius said, "Those whose strength is not enough give up halfway. You are now limiting yourself." Confucius said to Zi Jia, "Be a noble scholar. Don't be a petty scholar." Zi Yu became the governor of Wucheng. The master asked, "Have you been able to employ any good people?" Zi Yu answered, "I have found Dantai Mi Ming, who never takes shortcuts in his work, and does not come to my home unless he has real business to discuss." The master said, "Meng Jifan is not boastful. Once he was covering the rear during a retreat, and when he was about to enter the gate, he whipped his horse and said, 'I wasn't so brave as to be last. My horse would not run fast enough.'" The master said, "Without the smooth speech of Preacher Tuo, or the good looks of Prince Zhao of Song, it is difficult to stay out of trouble in the present age." The master said, "Who can go out without using the door? So why doesn't anybody follow the way?" The master said, "If raw substance dominates refinement, you will be coarse. If refinement dominates raw substance, you will be clerical. When refinement and raw qualities are well blended, you will be a noble person." The master said, "People are straightforward at birth. Once they lose this, they rely on luck to avoid trouble." The master said, "Knowing it is not as good as loving it. Loving it is not as good as delighting in it." The master said, "You can teach high-level topics to those of above-average ability, but you can't teach high-level topics to those of less than average ability." Fan Chi asked about the nature of wisdom. Confucius said, "Working to give the people justice and paying respect to the spirits, but keeping away from them you can call wisdom." He asked about the nature of Ren. Confucius said, "Ah yes, Ren. If you suffer first and then attain to it, it can be called Ren." The master said, "The wise enjoy the sea. The humane enjoy the mountains. The wise are busy. The humane are tranquil. The wise are happy. The humane are eternal." The master said, "The state of Qi, with one change, could be at the level of Lu. The state of Lu, with one change, could attain to the way." The master said, "A cornered vessel without corners. Is it a cornered vessel or not?" Zai Wo asked, "If you tell a Ren man there is Ren at the bottom of the well, will he climb into it?" Confucius said, "Are you kidding? The noble man will go to the well, but not fall into it. He can be deceived, but not to the point of serious loss." The master said, "The noble man who studies culture extensively and disciplines himself with propriety can keep from error." The master met with Nan Zi, and Zi Lu was displeased. The master swore, saying, "Whatever I have done wrong, may heaven punish me. May heaven punish me." The master said, "Even over a long period of time, there have been few people who have actualized the mean into manifest virtue." Zi Gong asked, "Suppose there were a ruler who benefited the people far and wide, and was capable of bringing salvation to the multitude. What would you think of him? Might he be called humane?" The master said, "Why only humane? He would undoubtedly be a sage. Even Yao and Shun would have had to strive to achieve this. Now the Ren man, wishing himself to be established, sees that others are established, and, wishing himself to be successful, sees that others are successful. To be able to take one's own feelings as a guide may be called the art of Ren." The master said, "I am a transmitter, rather than an original thinker. I trust and enjoy the teachings of the ancients. In my heart, I compare myself to old Peng." The master said, "Keeping silent and thinking, studying without satiety, teaching others without weariness. Somehow I have these abilities." The master said, "Having virtue and not cultivating it, studying and not sifting, hearing what is just and not following, not being able to change wrongdoing, these are the things that make me uncomfortable." During the master's leisure time, he was relaxed and enjoyed himself. The master said, "I am really going down the drain. I have not dreamt of the Duke of Zhu for a long time now." The master said, "Set your aspirations on the way, hold to virtue, rely on your Ren, and relax in the study of the arts." The master said, From the one who brought a bundle of dried meat, upwards, I have never denied a person my instruction. The master said, if a student is not eager, I won't teach him. If he is not struggling with the truth, I won't reveal it to him. If I lift up one corner, and he can't come back with the other 3, I won't do it again. If the master sat beside a person in mourning, he would not eat to the full. If he had wept on a certain day, he would not sing. Confucius said to Yan Wan, when needed, acting; when not needed, concealing. Only you and I can do this. Zi Lu said, if you had to handle a major army, who would you choose to assist you? Confucius said, I would not select the kind of man who likes to wrestle with tigers or cross rivers on foot, who can die without a second thought. It must be someone who approaches his business with caution, who likes to plan things well and see them to their completion. The master said, if the attainment of wealth was guaranteed in its seeking, even if I were to become a groom with a whip in hand to get it, I would do so. But since its attainment cannot be guaranteed, I will go with that which I love. The things with which the master was cautious were fasting, war, and sickness. When Confucius was in Qi, he heard the Shao music, and for 3 months did not know the taste of meat. He said, I never knew music could reach this level of excellence. Yen Yu said, is our teacher in favor of the ruler of Wei? Zi Gong said, well, I will go find out. He entered the teacher's room and asked, what kind of men were Bo Yi and Shu Qi? Confucius said, they were ancient worthies. Zi Gong asked, weren't they resented by anyone? Confucius said, if you seek Ren and attain it, what resentment can you incur? Zi Gong came out and said, he is not in favor of him. The master said, I can live with coarse rice to eat, water for drink, and my arm as a pillow, and still be happy. Wealth and honors that one possesses in the midst of injustice are like floating clouds. The master said, if I could add several years to my life, I would have studied the changes from the age of 50 and become free of error. Topics which the teacher regularly discussed were the Book of Odes, the Book of History, and the maintenance of propriety. These were the topics which he regularly discussed. The Duke of Shay asked Zi Lu about Confucius. Zi Lu didn't answer him. The teacher said, why didn't you just tell him that I am a man who in eagerness for study forgets to eat, in his enjoyment of it forgets his problems, and who is unaware of old age setting in? The master said, I was not born with wisdom. I love the ancient teachings and have worked hard to attain to their level. The master never discussed strange phenomena, physical exploits, disorder, or ghost stories. The master said, when doing something together as a threesome, there must be one who will have something to teach me. I pick out people's good and follow it. When I see their bad points, I correct them in myself. The master said, heaven gave birth to the virtue within me. What can Huan Tui do to me? Confucius said to his disciples, my boys, do you think I conceal things from you? There is nothing I conceal from you. There is nothing that I do that is not right out in front of you. That is the way I am. The master taught 4 things: culture, correct action, loyalty, and trust. The master said, I have not yet been able to meet a sage, but I would be satisfied to meet a noble man. I have not yet met a man of true goodness, but would be satisfied to meet a man of constancy. lacking yet possessing, empty yet full, in difficulty yet at ease. How difficult it is to have constancy. When the master went fishing, he did not use a net. When he hunted, he would not shoot at a perched bird. The master said, "There may be those who can act creatively without knowledge. I am not at this level. I listen widely, select the good, and follow their ways. I observe broadly and contemplate. This is the second level of knowledge." Since it was hard to have a worthwhile discussion with the people of Huxiang, when one of their young men came to see the teacher, the disciples didn't know what to do with him. Confucius said, "Take people the way they come to you, not for the way they are after they leave. Why be so strict? If someone purifies his mind to approach you, accept him in his purity. Don't worry about what he does after he leaves." The master said, "Is humaneness far away? If I aspire for humaneness, it is right here." The Minister of Justice in Chen asked whether the Duke of Zhao knew the rules of propriety. Confucius said he did. When Confucius left, the minister bowed to his prince Wu Maqi and went up to him saying, "I have heard that the noble man is not partisan, but maybe he can be, since Prince Wu took a wife with the same surname, saying that she came from the elder family of Wu. If this prince knew the rules of propriety, then who doesn't know them?" Wu Maqi told this to Confucius. The teacher said, "I am so lucky. When I make a mistake, they always find it out." When the teacher was singing with someone, and he found out that they sang well, he would make them start over again, and he would sing the harmony. The master said, "In literature, perhaps I am equal to others, but I cannot manifest the behavior of the noble man." The master said, "I dare not claim to be a sage or a Ren man, but I strive for these without being disappointed, and I teach without becoming weary. This is what can be said of me." Gongji Hua said, "It is exactly these qualities that cannot be learned by the disciples." The master was very sick, and Zi Lu said that he would pray for him. Confucius said, "Is there such a thing?" Zi Lu said, "There is. The eulogies say, 'I pray for you to the spirits of the upper and lower realm.'" Confucius said, "Then I have been praying for a long time already." The master said, "Luxury leads to laxity. Frugality leads to rigidity. It is better to be rigid than to be lax." The master said, "The noble man is always at ease with himself. The inferior man is always anxious." The master was mild yet strict, authoritative yet not mean, courteous yet relaxed. The master said, "Tai Bo can be said to have had a perfected level of virtue. He declined the rule of the kingdom 3 times, without the people knowing about it." The master said, "Courtesy without propriety is wasted energy. Caution without propriety is timidity. Boldness without propriety is recklessness. Straightforwardness without propriety is rudeness. When the ruler is kind to those who are close to him, the people will be moved toward Ren. If he does not forget his old friends, the people too will not be fickle." Seng Zi was ill. He summoned his disciples and said, "Uncover my feet and hands." The Book of Odes says, "He was cautious, apprehensive, as if at the edge of a deep chasm, as if treading on thin ice. From now, I know that I have gotten past this." While Seng Zi was ill, Meng Jingzi went to see him. Zhengzi said, "When a bird is about to die, its song is melancholy. When a man is about to die, his words are excellent." The way, prized by the noble man, has three aspects. In his behavior and deportment, he avoids brashness and arrogance. When paying attention to his facial expressions, he is guided by honesty. When speaking, he avoids vulgarity and slander. As for attending to the sacrificial tables, there are specialists hired for these jobs. Zhengzi said, "Using one's ability to learn from those of less ability, using one's learning to learn from the unlearned, possessing yet seeming to lack, being full yet seeming empty, able to accept harm without retaliation. In the past I had a friend who could do this." Zhengzi said, "A man who can be entrusted with the care of the crown prince, who can take responsibility for a district of 100 li, and who can handle a major crisis without losing touch with himself, is he a noble man? He certainly is a noble man." Zhengzi said, "To be called a she, you must be open-minded as well as resolute, since your burden is heavy and your course is long. If you take Ren as your burden, is it not heavy? If you continue to death, is it not long?" The master said, "Be aroused by poetry, structure yourself with propriety, refine yourself with music." The master said, "You might force people to act according to a certain principle, but you won't be able to force them to understand it." The master said, "A man who enjoys boldness and hates poverty will be rebellious. If a man lacks Ren and his dissatisfaction reaches an extreme, he will rebel." The master said, "Perhaps you could be as handsome and as talented as the Duke of Zhu, but if you are arrogant or stingy, those good qualities will not be noticed." The master said, "It is quite rare to see someone who applies himself to the study of something for 3 years without having a noticeable result." The master said, "Be of unwavering good faith, and love learning. Be steadfast unto death in pursuit of the good way. Do not enter a state which is in peril, nor reside in one which people have rebelled. When the way prevails in the world, show yourself. When it does not, then hide. When the way prevails in your own state, to be poor and obscure is a disgrace. But when the way does not prevail in your own state, to be rich and honored is a disgrace." The master said, "If you don't have the official position, you can't plan the affairs of government." The master said, "After Music Master Ji took over, the finale of the Guanju was magnificent. How it filled my ears." The master said, "I really don't know what to do with those people who are ardent but not upright, frank but not careful, and naive but not honest." The master said, "Study as if you have not reached your goal, as if you were afraid of losing what you have." Confucius said, "How sublime was the manner in which Shun and Yu handled the empire without lifting a finger." The master said, "The rulership of Yao was so magnificent. He was so sublime that even though there is nothing as great as heaven, he could accord with it. His greatness was so boundless it is beyond description. His efficacy was amazing. His writings were enlightening." Shun, with 5 ministers, was able to successfully govern the empire. King Wu said, "Altogether, I have 10 ministers." Confucius said, "Their ability is the issue. Don't you think so?" When the Tang and Wu dynasties combined, they had as many ministers as you, with a woman and 9 men. King Wen of the Zhou controlled 2/3 of the empire, and with this served the yin. Indeed, the virtue of Zhou can be called the epitome of virtue. The master said, Yu was flawless in character, surviving on the simplest food and drink, yet perfect in his piety to the ancestral spirits. Normally wearing coarse clothing, he looked magnificent in his ceremonial cap and gown. Living in a humble abode, he exhausted himself in the excavation of drainage ways and canals. I cannot find a flaw in his character. The master seldom spoke about advantage in connection with destiny, or in connection with Ren. A man from Dajiang said, "How great Confucius is! His learning is so broad. However, he is not known for expertise in any particular skill." When Confucius heard this, he said to his disciples, "What shall I take up? Shall I take up charioteering? Shall I take up archery? I think I will take up charioteering." The master said, "The linen cap is prescribed by the rules of propriety, but nowadays they use a silk one. It is economical, and I will go along with the consensus. Bowing below the hall is prescribed by the rules of propriety, but that is presumptuous. So even if I differ from the consensus, I will bow below the hall." There were 4 things the master had eliminated from himself: imposing his will, arbitrariness, stubbornness, and egotism. There was fear for the master's life when he was in the district of Guang. He said, "King Wen has already died, but his learning abides within me. If heaven intended to destroy this culture, then it would have been unattainable for later generations. If heaven does not want to destroy this learning, what can the men of Guang do to me?" A high minister asked Zigong, "If your master is really a sage, why does he know so many skills?" Zigong answered, "Heaven has granted him sagehood, as well as diverse skills." The master, hearing about this, said, "What does the minister know about me? As a youth, my family was poor, so I had to learn many worldly skills. Is skillfulness necessary for the noble man? Of course it isn't." Lao said, "Our teacher said, I didn't have an official position, therefore I developed various skills." The master said, "Do I possess knowledge? No, I do not possess it. Yet, if even simple men come to ask a question of me, I clear my mind completely and thoroughly investigate the matter from one end to the other." The master said, "The phoenix has not come. The yellow river has not produced at diagram. Alas, I am finished." If the master saw someone in mourning, or in full ceremonial dress, or a blind person, even if they were young, he would collect himself. If he had to pass them by, he would do it quickly. Yan Yuang sighed in admiration, saying, "Looking up to it, it gets higher. Boring into it, it gets harder. I see it in front, and suddenly it is behind me. My master skillfully guides his students one step at a time. He has broadened me with literature, disciplined me with propriety. I want to give up, but I can't. I have exhausted my ability, yet it seems as if there is something rising up in front of me. I want to follow it, but there is no way." The master was extremely ill, and Zi Lu wanted the disciples to become Confucius's ministers. Confucius, during a remission in his illness, said, "Ah, Yu has been deceitful for a long time. Though I don't have ministers, you would make it appear that I have them. Who would I be fooling? Heaven? I would much rather die in the hands of my disciples than in the hands of ministers, and I would prefer dying in the streets to a pompous funeral." Zigong said, "We have a beautiful gem here. Should we hide it away, or look for a good price and sell it? Confucius said, "Sell it, sell it," but I would wait till I got a good price. The master wanted to go and stay with the 9 tribes of the East. Someone said, "They are unruly. Why do you want to do such a thing?" Confucius said, "If a noble man dwells with them, how could they be unruly?" The master said, "Only after I returned to Lu from Wei did the music get straightened out, with the royal songs and the praises being played at the proper place and time." The master said, "When out in the world, I served my ruler and ministers. At home I served my father and elder brothers. I never dared to take funerals lightly, and I didn't get into trouble with alcohol. What problems could I possibly have?" The master, standing by a river, said, "It goes on like this, never ceasing, day or night." The master said, "I have never seen one who loves virtue as much as he loves beauty." The master said, "It is like building a mound. If I stop before carrying a single basket of earth, it is my stopping. It is like leveling the ground. If I continue even after dumping only 1 basket, it is my continuation." The master said, "I teach him, and he never slacks off. Ah, Hui." The master, speaking of Hui, said, "How rare is his type! I have seen him striving, and have never seen him rest." The master said, "There are some who sprout but do not blossom, some who blossom but do not bear fruit." The master said, "We should be in awe of the younger generation. How can we know that they will not be equal to us? But if a man reaches the age of 40 or 50 and has still not been heard from, then he is no one to be in awe of." The master said, "Is anyone incapable of following words of correct instruction? But it is self-transformation according to it that is important. Is anyone incapable of enjoying words of gentle advice? But it is inquiring deeply into their meaning that is important. If I enjoy without inquiring deeply, and follow without changing myself, how can I say that I have understood them?" The master said, "Base yourself in loyalty and trust. Do not be companion with those who are not your moral equal. When you make a mistake, don't hesitate to correct it." The master said, "You can snatch away the general of a large army, but you cannot snatch away the will of even the lowliest of men." The master said, "Standing in tattered work clothes among gentlemen, clothed in fine furs without any embarrassment, it is you. Not harming, not coveting, how can he do wrong?" Zi Lu continuously chanted this. Confucius said, "With just this, how can you attain excellence?" The master said, "Only after it turns winter are we aware of the survival of the pine and the cypress." The master said, "The wise are not confused, the humane are not anxious, the brave are not afraid." The master said, "There are some with whom we can study, but with whom we cannot traverse on the same path. There are some with whom we can traverse on the same path, but with whom we cannot establish ourselves. There are some with whom we can establish ourselves, but with whom we cannot agree on with future planning. As the flowers of the aspen plum lean and turn, how could I not think of you? But your house is so far." Confucius said, "If he does not think about the distance, how could it be a problem?" When Confucius was in his village, he was quietly sincere, as if he could not speak. When he was in the ancestral temple or the court, he was eloquent, but extremely cautious. When speaking to the junior Grand Masters in court, he was candid and at ease. When speaking to the senior Grand Masters, he was straightforward, but formal. When the ruler was present, he straightened up ceremoniously, but with a calm demeanor. When the ruler summoned him to take care of important guests, his face took on a serious expression, and he walked briskly. He bowed as he came to the place of greeting, and with his left and right hand held his garment in front and back, keeping it properly adjusted. He moved forward quickly with his arms like wings. When the guest left, he would, without fail, watch and continue to report, "The guest has stopped looking back." When he came through the court door, he shrunk down deferentially, as if there was not enough space. Once inside, he did not stand in the middle, and he would not step on the threshold. When he passed in front of the ruler's position, his expression became serious, and he stepped carefully in small steps. It seemed difficult for him to speak. He lifted up the hems of his skirt when entering the hall, nodding deeply in respect. He held his breath as if he could not breathe. Upon leaving, once he had gone down one step, his countenance became relaxed, and he appeared to be contented. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, he began to move briskly, his arms like wings. Returning to his original position, he was deferential. When holding the jade scepter, he was bent over with deference, as if he could not support it. He held it from above in a folding way, and from below in an offering way. He showed a serious and anxious expression, walking in a straight line with shuffling steps. In the presentation ceremony, he showed a genial expression. In private meetings, he seemed relaxed, without concerns. The noble man did not wear decorative cuffs, colored violet and puce. For his house clothes he would not wear red and maroon. During hot weather, he would wear thin, unlined garments made of fine and coarse vine fiber when he went out. With a black robe, he wore a black sheepskin mantle. With an uncolored robe, he wore a fawn-skin mantle. With a yellow robe, he wore a fox-skin mantle. His house robe was long, with a short right sleeve. When always slept in sleeping garments, which were half again as long as his body. At home, he sat on thick fox and badger rugs. When not in a mourning period, there was nothing he would not wear on his decorative belt sash. If clothes were not ceremonial, he would definitely adjust their length. He would not wear a black sheepskin mantle or a black hat when paying visits of condolence. He always showed up in court on the 1st of the month, properly attired in court garb. When fasting, he always wore clean white clothes of linen. During the fast, he would always change his diet, as well as his seat. When he ate, he was not averse to refined rice, nor to finely minced meat. He would not eat rice that was rancid or had gone rotten, nor fish and meat that had spoiled. He would not eat food that had a bad color or smell. He would not eat food that was not cooked to the proper level, or which was out of season. Nor would he eat food that was not properly sliced, or did not come with the appropriate condiments. Even if there was a lot of meat, he would not eat it in greater quantity than rice. It was only wine with which he did not limit himself, but at the same time he never lost control of himself. He would not drink wine or eat dried meat that came from the marketplace. He would not refrain from eating food with ginger, but he would not overdo it. When there was a sacrifice for the ruler, he would not keep the meat overnight. As for sacrificial meats in general, he would not keep them more than 3 days, and if they were more than 3 days old, he would not eat them. He did not chat while eating, and he did not talk after retiring, no matter what kind of simple fare it might be, such as coarse rice or broth. He would always make an offering, doing so with due solemnity. If a mat was not straight, he would not sit on it. When drinking with the townsfolk, he would only leave after the elders had done so. When the townsfolk carried out rituals for the cleansing of evil spirits, he would don his ceremonial court robes and stand on the eastern steps. When he asked some to go to another country, he would bow to him twice before sending him off. Kangzi sent the master some medicine as a present. Respectfully receiving it, he said, "I don't know about this medicine, so I don't dare to take it." There was a fire in the stables. When the master returned from court, he asked, "Was anyone hurt?" He never asked about the horses. When the ruler would send a gift of cooked food, he would always sit straight and first taste it. If the ruler sent uncooked meat, he would always cook it and offer it to others. When the ruler presented him with a live animal, he would always rear it. When attending at a meal for the ruler, after the ruler makes the sacrifice, he is first to eat it. When he was sick and the ruler came to visit him, he would lie down facing to the east, with his court robe on him and his sash drawn across him. When the ruler summoned him, he would go at once, without waiting for the horses to be yoked to his carriage. When he entered the great ancestral temple, he inquired about every detail. When a friend died, if there was no one to handle the funeral, he would say, "I will take care of it." When a friend would send a gift of food, even horses and carriages, if it was not sacrificial meat, he would not bow. When he slept, he would not lie on the bed like a corpse. At home, he would not put on any special airs. When he saw someone in mourning clothes, even if he knew them well, he would change his expression. Encountering a person in full attire, or the blind, even if he was in his informal home dress, he would show the proper attitude. Encountering someone in mourning, he would lower his head in the carriage, and would do the same for someone carrying census boards. When delicious food was served, his expression would change and he would stand up. His expression would also change with a sudden thunderclap or a violent wind. When he got up into the carriage, he would stand straight, holding the straps. Once inside the carriage, he didn't look about, talk rapidly, or point around with his hands. At a change in expression, the bird took off. It flew around, then joined a flock. The master said, "The hen pheasant on the mountain bridge. What timing!" Zi Lu offered it some bait, but after sniffing 3 times, it took off. The master said, "The country folk develop their understanding of music and ritual earlier. The nobility develop these later. From a practical perspective, I suggest earlier development." Among those who followed me in Chen and Kai, none have come to see me since. The virtuous in conduct were Yan Yuan, Min Ziqian, Ran Bon Yu, and Zhang Gon. The articulate were Zai Wo and Zhi Gong. Skillful administrators were Ran Yu and Zi Lu. Excellent in their scholarship were Zi Yu and Zi Jia. The master said, "Hui is no help to me. He simply delights in everything I say." The master said, "How filial Min Ziqian was. Others say nothing of him different from the report of his parents." Nan Rong frequently recited the line of the white jade table. Confucius gave him his elder brother's daughter to wed. Ji Kangji asked which of the disciples loved to learn. Confucius replied, "Yan Hui did. Unfortunately, he died young, and there has been no one like him since." When Yan Yuan died, Yuan Lu, his father, asked the master for his carriage so that he could sell it to buy an outer coffin. The master said, "Talented or not, a son is called a son. When my son Li died, we had an inner coffin, but not an outer coffin. I could not go on foot just for the sake of making an outer coffin. When I am following in the rear of the Grand Masters, I can't walk on foot." When Yan Yuan died, the master cried, "How cruel! Heaven is killing me." When Yan Hui died, the master wept uncontrollably. The disciples said, "Master, you are going overboard with this." Confucius said, "Going overboard? If I can't cry now, when should I cry?" When Yan Hui died, the disciples wanted to give him a lavish funeral. The master told them not to, but they did it anyway. Confucius said, "Hui treated me like a father. Now I have not been able to treat him as a son, and it is the fault of you students." Qi Lu asked about serving the spirits. Confucius said, "If you can't yet serve men, how can you serve the spirits?" Lu said, "May I ask about death?" Confucius said, "If you don't understand what life is, how will you understand death?" When Min Zi awaited by the master's side, he was calm and precise. Zi Lu was always ready for action. Ran Yu and Zi Gong were affable. The master was pleased, but said, "People like you can't die a natural death." The men of Lu were rebuilding the main treasury. Min Ziqian said, "Why don't we keep its old style? Why do we have to change it completely?" Confucius said, "This fellow doesn't say much, but when he does, he is right on the mark." Confucius had said, "What is the loot of you doing at my door?" And so the other disciples had begun to lose their respect for Zi Lu. Confucius said, "Yu has ascended to the main hall, but has not yet entered the inner chambers." Zi Gong asked who was the most worthy between Shi and Shang. The master said, "Shi goes too far. Shang does not go far enough." "Then is Shi superior?" The master said, "Going too far is the same as not going far enough." Even though the head of the Qi family was wealthier than the Duke of Zhu, Qiu collected taxes for him and made him richer. Confucius said, "He is no disciple of mine. My students, you can beat the drum and attack him if you want." Zhai is simple-minded. Zheng is slow. Shi is biased. Yu is reckless. Confucius said, "Hui is completely full, yet always possessionless. Si is not wealthy by fate, so he has to contrive in order to enrich himself, and is usually on the mark." Zi Zhang asked about the way of the good man. Confucius said, "If you don't follow its traces, you won't enter the inner chamber." Confucius said, "Someone may have profound theories, but is he a noble man, or is he only superficially impressive?" Zi Lu asked if it was a good idea to immediately put a teaching into practice when he first heard it. Confucius said, "You have a father and an older brother to consult. Why do you need to be so quick to practice it?" Zan Yu asked the same question. Confucius said, "You should practice it immediately." Gong Zhihua said, "When Yu asked you, you told him he should consult his father and elder brother first. When Qiu asked you, you told him to practice it immediately. May I ask why?" Confucius said, "Qiu has a tendency to give up easily, so I push him. Yu has a tendency to jump the gun, so I restrain him." During the incident of the master's endangerment in Guang, Hui had fallen behind. Confucius said, "I was afraid they had killed you." Hui said, "While you are alive, how can I dare to die?" When Ji Ziran asked the master whether Zhang Yu and Ran Kui could be called great ministers, the master said, "I thought you were going to ask about someone else, but then you asked me about you and Qiu. A great minister serves his ruler by means of the way, and if he can't, he will quit. Now you and Qiu can be called stopgap ministers. Does this mean that they will do as they are told?" The master said, "If they were ordered to kill their father or ruler, they wouldn't do it." Zi Lu got Zi Gao installed as prefect of Bi. The master said, "You are damaging someone's son." Zi Lu said, "There are people and there are national altars to be administered. Why should it be necessary to read books to be regarded as learned?" The master said, "This is why I don't like glib people." Zi Lu, Zi Ji, Zan Yu, and Gong Zhihua were sitting with the master. Confucius said, "Although I am a day or so older than you fellows, forget about it for the time being. You are always saying, our talents are unrecognized. Suppose your abilities were fully acknowledged. What would you do then?" Zi Lu jumped to reply first, saying, "I would like to be in the position of the charge of 1,000-carriage state, which was being threatened by the armies of the surrounding larger states, and suffering from crop failure. If I were in this position, within 3 years my people would be fearless and know how to take care of themselves." Confucius laughed at him. He turned to Q and said, "What about you?" Q said, "Let me have the government of a territory of 60 or 70 li, or maybe 50 to 60 li, for 3 years, and the people would have all they need. As for handling the affairs of ritual and music, I would seek the services of a noble man." Qi, what about you? Qi said, "I cannot say I am capable of what the other two have proposed, though I would like to work toward it. At the services at the ancestral hall, or at the audiences with the prince, I would like to serve as a minor assistant, dressed in the ceremonial gown and cap." Dian, what about you? Dian set his lute down with its strings still ringing, and stood up. "What I would like to do," he said, "is quite different from these 3. The master said, "What harm can there be? Please, speak as the others have." Dian said, "At the height of spring, all decked out in spring clothes, I would like to take 5 or 6 young men, and 6 or 7 youngsters to go for a swim in the Yi River, enjoying the cool breeze at the Rain Dance Festival, and make our way back home, singing." Confucius sighed and said, "Ah, lovely. I am with you, Dian." The 3 others left, and Dian asked the master, "What did you think about the words of those 3? Confucius said, "Each just told his wish." "But why did you laugh at you?" "Because to govern a state, you need propriety, and his words are totally lacking in humility. That is why I laughed at him." But Q wasn't asking for a state. Confucius said, "Have you ever seen a territory of 60 or 70 li that wasn't a state?" At least Qi was asking for a state. "Yes, but who besides the nobility can serve in the ancestral temple, or have an audience with the prince? If Qi were to be a minor assistant at these affairs, who could be the chief assistant?" Yan Yuan asked about the meaning of humaneness. The master said, "To completely overcome selfishness and to keep to propriety is humaneness. If for a full day you can overcome selfishness and keep to propriety, everyone in the world will return to humaneness. Does humaneness come from oneself or from others?" Yan Yuan asked, "May I ask in further detail how this is to be brought about?" Confucius said, "Do not watch what is improper. Do not listen to what is improper. Do not speak improperly, and do not act improperly." Yan Yuan said, "Although I am not so perspicacious, I will apply myself to this teaching." Zhang Gong asked about the meaning of Ren. The master said, "When you are out in the world, act as if meeting an important guest. Employ the people as if you were assisting at a great ceremony. What you don't want done to yourself, don't do to others. Live in your town without stirring up resentments, and live in your household without stirring up resentments." Zhang Gong said, "Although I am not so smart, I will apply myself to this teaching." Sima Niu asked about the meaning of Ren. Confucius said, "The Ren man is hesitant to speak." Niu replied, "Are you saying that Ren is mere hesitancy in speaking?" Confucius said, "Actualizing it is so difficult. How can you not be hesitant to speak about it?" Sima Niu asked about the qualities of the noble man. Confucius said, "The noble man is free from anxiety and fear." Niu said, "Free from anxiety and fear? Is this all that it takes to be a noble man?" Confucius said, "If you reflect within yourself and find nothing to be ashamed of, How could you have anxiety or fear? Sima Niu, upset, said, Everyone has brothers. I alone have none. Zijia said, I have heard this proverb. Life and death are up to fate. Wealth and honor are held by heaven. If the noble man is reverent without lapse, and courteous to everyone within the frame of propriety, everything within the 4 seas will be his brother. Why should a noble man be concerned about not having brothers? Zizhang asked about the meaning of enlightenment. Confucius said, One who does not experience the permeation of slander, and who is not agitated by accusations, can certainly be called enlightened. Indeed, such a person may be called transcendent. Zigong asked about government. The master said, Enough food, enough weapons, and the confidence of the people. Zigong said, Suppose you had no alternative but to give up one of these 3. Which one would be let go of first? The master said, Weapons. Zigong said, What if you had to give up one of the remaining 2? Which one would it be? The master said, Food. From ancient times, death has come to all men, but a people without confidence in its rulers will not stand. Ji Zizhang said, All the noble man needs is to have his substance. Why should he need external refinement? Zigong said, Amazing, you speak about the noble man, but a team of horses couldn't keep up with your tongue. Refinement is substance. Substance is refinement. When the hair is taken off the hide of a tiger or a leopard, it looks the same as the hide of a dog or a sheep. Duke Ai asked Yu Rou, It has been a year of famine, and there are not enough revenues to run the state. What should I do? Rou said, Why can't you use a 10% tax? The Duke answered, I can't even get by on a 20% tax. How am I going to do it on 10%? Rou said, If the people have enough, what prince can be in want? If the people are in want, how can the prince be satisfied? Zichang asked how to increase virtue and dispel confusion. Confucius said, Base yourself in loyalty and trust, and permeate yourself with fairness, and your virtue will be paramount. We want life for the things we love, and death for the things we hate. But if we have already desired life for something, and now we want it to die, we are confused. Really, it was not for wealth, just for a change. Duke Jing of Qi asked Confucius about government. Confucius replied, Let the ruler be a ruler, minister be a minister, father be a father, son be a son. The Duke said, Excellent indeed. If the ruler is not a ruler, the ministers not ministers, fathers not fathers, and sons not sons, even if I have food, how can I eat it? The master said, You is the kind of man who could settle a dispute with a single sentence. He never delayed in giving his answer. The master said, In hearing lawsuits, I am no better than anyone else. What we need is to have no lawsuits. Zizhang asked about carrying out proper governance. The master said, Stay in your position without wearying. Carry your policies guided by loyalty. The master said, Studying liberal arts broadly, and disciplining yourself with propriety, it is easy to stay on the narrow path. The master said, The noble man develops people's good points, not their bad points. The inferior man does the opposite. Ji Kangji asked Confucius about government. Confucius replied, saying, To govern means to rectify. If you were to lead the people with correctness, who would not be rectified? Being robbed, Ji Kangzi was upset and questioned Confucius about what to do. Confucius said, If you were desireless, they wouldn't steal from you, even if you were to offer them a reward to do so. Ji Kangji asked Confucius about government, saying, Suppose I were to kill the unjust, in order to advance the just, Would that be all right? Confucius replied, In doing government, what is the need of killing? If you desire good, the people will be good. The nature of the noble man is like the wind. The nature of the inferior man is like the grass. When the wind blows over the grass, it always bends. Zizhang asked what a shi should be like, that he may be called excellent. Confucius said, What do you mean by excellent? Zizhang replied, It means to be famous in your town, and famous in your clan. Confucius said, That is fame, not excellence. One who is excellent has an upright character and loves justice. If you listen carefully to what people say, observe their facial expressions, and are careful to be humble to them, you will be excellent in your town, and excellent in your clan. As far as fame is concerned, if you put on a show of goodness and do otherwise, and are not the least bit bothered in doing so, you will indeed be famous in your town, and famous in your clan. Fan Chi, while strolling with the master among the rain dance altars, said, May I ask how to heighten virtue, overcome wickedness, and resolve delusion? The master said, Excellent question. If you take care of your responsibilities before you seek your own gain, won't this heighten your virtue? If you attack your own evil rather than the evil of others, won't you overcome wickedness? If, because of a moment's anger, you endanger your own life, as well as that of your parents, is this not delusion? Fan Chi asked about the meaning of Ren. Confucius said, Love others. He asked about the meaning of knowledge. The master said, Know others. Fan Chi couldn't get it. The master said, If you put the honest in positions of power and discard the dishonest, you will force the dishonest to become honest. Fan Chi left, and seeing Zizhia said, A little while ago I saw the master, and asked him about knowledge. He told me, Put the honest in positions of power and discard the dishonest, and you will force the dishonest to be honest. What did he mean? Zizhia said, How rich our master's words are! When Shun was emperor, he selected Cao Yao from among the people, put him in charge, and the evil people stayed far away. When Tang was emperor, he selected Ai Yin, put him in charge, and the evil again stayed far away. Zi Gong asked about the way of friendship. Confucius said, Speak to your friends honestly, and skillfully show them the right path. If you cannot, then stop. Don't humiliate yourself. Seng Zi said, The noble man uses his refinement to meet his friends, and through his friends develops his Ren. Zi Lu asked about how to govern. Confucius said, Lead the people and work hard for them. Is there anything else? Don't get discouraged. Zhang Gong, currently serving as prime minister to the head of the Qi family, asked about government. Confucius said, First, get some officers. Then grant pardon to all the petty offenses. And then put virtuous and able men into positions of responsibility. He asked, How am I going to find these virtuous and able men to get them into these positions? The master said, Select from those you know. Will the people let you ignore the ones you don't know of? Zi Lu said, The ruler of Y is anticipating your assistance in the administration of his state. What will be your top priority? Confucius said, There must be a correction of terminology. Zi Lu said, Are you serious? Why is this so important? Confucius said, You're really simple, aren't you? A noble man is cautious about jumping to conclusions about that which he does not know. If terminology is not correct, then what is said cannot be followed. If what is said cannot be followed, then work cannot be accomplished. If work cannot be accomplished, then ritual and music cannot be developed. If ritual and music cannot be developed, then criminal punishments will not be appropriate. If criminal punishments are not appropriate, the people cannot make a move. Therefore, the noble man needs to have his terminology applicable to real language, and his speech must accord with his actions. The speech of the noble man cannot be indefinite. Fan Chi wanted to ask about agriculture. Confucius said, "Why don't you ask an old farmer?" Fan Chi then said that he would like to learn about gardening. Confucius said, "Why don't you ask an old gardener?" Fan Chi left. Confucius said, "Fan is really simple, isn't he? If the men in charge love propriety, the people can't stand to be disrespectful. If the men in charge love fairness, then the people can't stand not to follow them. If the men in charge love trust, then the people cannot stand not to respond with their emotions. If you were to govern in this way, the people would come flocking to your kingdom, carrying their babies on their backs. Why do you have to worry about agriculture?" The master said, "You can recite the 300 poems from the Book of Odes, but when you try to use them in administration, they are not effective, and in handling the outlying regions, you cannot apply them. Even though you know a lot, what good is it?" The master said, "When you have gotten your own life straightened out, things will go well without your giving orders. But if your own life isn't straightened out, even if you give orders, no one will follow them." The governments of Lu and Wei are elder and younger brothers. Confucius said of Gongji Jin of Wei that he was good at managing his household. When he began to accumulate property, he said, "It seems to be enough." When he had a little more, he said, "This will do." When he became rich, he said, "This is pretty good." Ran Yu was driving for the master on a trip to Wei. Confucius said, "How populous is it here?" Ran Yu said, "Once there are so many people, what should be done?" "Enrich them," said the master. "Once they are enriched, what next?" "Educate them." The master said, "If any of the rulers were to employ me, I would have control of the situation within a month, and would have everything straightened out within 3 years." The master said, "If good men were to govern a country for 100 years, they could overcome cruelty and do away with killing. How true this saying is." The master said, "Even if you have the position of kingship, it would still take a generation for Ren to prevail." The master said, "If you can correct yourself, what problem will you have in governing? If you can't correct yourself, how can you correct others?" Ran Zi returned from court. The master said, "What kept you?" Ran replied, "I had official business." The master said, "It was a personal matter, right? If it were official business, even though I am no longer directly involved, I would have heard about it." Duke Ding asked if there were a single phrase which could uplift a country. Confucius replied, "Words in themselves cannot have such an effect. Nonetheless, there is a proverb which says, 'Being a ruler is difficult, and being a minister is not easy.' If you really understand the difficulties of rulership, might this not be enough to uplift a country?" The Duke asked further, "Is this not close to the saying, 'There a single phrase which could ruin a country'?" Confucius answered, "Again, words in themselves cannot have such an effect, but the people also have a proverb which says, 'I do not enjoy ruling. I only enjoy people not disagreeing with me.' Now, if you are a good man and no one disagrees with you, it is fine. But if you are evil and no one disagrees with you, perhaps you could destroy the country with a single utterance." The Duke of Shay asked about government. Confucius said, "If you do it right, then those close to you will be happy, and those who are far away will come to you." Zi Jia, who was serving as governor of Jufu, asked about government. Confucius said, "Don't be impatient, and don't look for small advantages. If you are impatient, you will not be thorough. If you look for small advantages, you will never accomplish anything great." The Duke of Shay told Confucius, "In my land there are righteous men. If a father steals a sheep, the son will testify against him. Confucius said, "The righteous men in my land are different from this. The father conceals the wrongs of his son, and the son conceals the wrongs of his father. This is the correct way." Fan Chi asked about Ren. Confucius said, "Be naturally courteous, be respectful in working for superiors, and be sincere to people. Even the barbarian tribes cannot do without this." Zigong asked, "What must a man be like to be called a she?" The master said, "One who in conducting himself maintains a sense of honor, and who, when sent to the 4 quarters of the world, does not disgrace his prince's commission, may be called a she." The master said, "Since I can't get men who act according to the middle way, I must find the adamant and the cautious. The adamant go after things, the cautious restrain themselves from doing certain things." The master said, "The Southerners have a saying, 'If a man is not constant in his self-cultivation, he cannot be a shaman or a healer.' It is a good proverb. If you are not consistently developing your virtue, what can you give to others? You will not even be able to give a diagnosis." The master said, "The noble man is in harmony, but does not follow the crowd. The inferior man follows the crowd, but is not in harmony." Zigong asked, "What do you think if all the people in town like someone?" "Not too good," said Confucius. "What if they all hate you?" "Also not too good. It is better if the good people in town like you, and the evil ones hate you." The master said, "The noble person is easy to work for, but difficult to please. If you try to please them by dubious means, they will not be happy. And in their employment of people, they assign them tasks commensurate with abilities. The inferior person is difficult to work for, but easy to please. Even if you have used devious means to please them, they will still be happy. And in their employment of people, they try to squeeze everything out of them that they can." The master said, "The noble man is self-confident without being arrogant. The inferior man is arrogant and lacks self-confidence." The master said, "With firmness, strength, simplicity, and caution in speaking, you will be close to Ren." Zi Lu asked, "What sort of man deserves to be called a she?" Confucius said, "If you are decisive, kind, and gentle, you can be called a she. With friends, the she is clear but kind. With his brothers, he is gentle." The master said, "Only when good men have instructed the people for 7 years may they take up arms. To lead untrained people into battle is the same thing as throwing them away." Jian asked about what is shameful. Confucius said, "When the way prevails in your state, to be concerned about your salary is shameful. When the way is absent in your state, to be concerned about your salary is shameful." Jian asked, "When one is not motivated by arrogance, pride, resentment, and desire, can he be considered humane?" Confucius said, "This can certainly be called difficult, but I don't know if it can be called Ren." The master said, "A she who is addicted to comfort should not be called a she." The master said, "When the government is just, you may speak boldly and act boldly. When you have an unjust government, you may act boldly, but be careful of what you say." The master said, "The virtuous will certainly have something to say, but those who have something to say are not necessarily virtuous. The Ren man is always brave, but the brave man is not necessarily possessed of Ren." Nan Gongguo said to Confucius, "Yi was skillful at archery, and Ao shook a whole ship, but neither died a natural death. Yu and Ji did their own farming and ended up as emperors." Confucius didn't answer. When Nan Gongguo left, Confucius said, "Here is a noble man, a man of enhanced virtue." The master said, There are some cases where a noble man may not be a perfectly humane man, but there are no cases where an inferior man is a perfectly humane man. The Master said, "Can you love someone without exerting yourself for them? Can you be sincere to someone without teaching them?" The Master said, "To be poor without resentment is difficult. To be rich without arrogance is easy." Zi Lu asked what constitutes a perfected man. Confucius said, "If you have the wisdom of Zhang Wuzhong, the desirelessness of Gong Chuo, the courage of Bianzhuang Zi, and the abilities of Zan Qi, and are also refined through propriety and music, you might indeed be called a perfected man. But if you want to perfect yourself right now, why would you need all of that? When you see an opportunity for advantage, think of what would be the right thing to do. Encountering danger, leave it up to destiny. When you can stay in difficulty for a long time and not forget the words that you have lived by, you can be regarded as a perfected man." The Master asked Gong Mingjia about Gongshu Wenzi. "Is it true that your master doesn't speak, doesn't laugh, and doesn't accept anything?" Gong Mingjia replied, "This is an exaggeration. My master speaks when it is appropriate, and people never get tired of his words. He laughs when he is happy, and people never tire of his laughter. He takes when it is right to do so, and people never get tired of his taking." Confucius said, "Is this so? Is it really so?" The Master said, "Duke Wen of Jin was devious and not upright. Duke Huan of Qi was upright and not devious." Zi Lu said, "When Huang Gong assassinated Gongji Jiu, Zhao Hu followed him to his death, but Guan Zhong did not. He had not fully developed his humaneness, had he?" The Master said, "When Huang Gong unified the nobles, it was not through military force, but by the efforts of Guan Zhong. How about this level of humaneness?" Zi Gong said, "Guan Zhong was not truly a good man. When Huang Gong executed his own brother, Gong Zhijiu, he was not only incapable of dying along with his lord, he became Huan's minister." Confucius said, "When Guan Zhong served Huang Gong as minister, he made him leader of the nobles and straightened out the disorder in the realm. The people are benefiting from this down to the present day. If not for Guan Zhong, we would all be like unkempt barbarians, wearing our hair over our faces and fastening our clothes on the left. Shall we exercise the sincerity of simple people who would hang themselves to death in a ditch with no one knowing about it?" The minister Zhuan of Gongshu Wenzi rose to the rank of court officer together with Wenzi. When the Master heard of it, he said, "He certainly deserved the appellation of refined." Confucius was speaking about the evils of Duke Ling of Wei. Kang Zi said, "If he is such a person, how can he stay in power?" Confucius said, "Zhang Shu's Yu takes care of Kang Zi's guests, Preacher Tuo handles the temples, and Wang Sunjia is his military commander. With ministers like these, how could he fall from power?" The Master said, "If your words are not humble, it will be difficult to put them into action." Confucius bathed and went to court, reporting on an incident to Duke Ai, saying, "Chen Heng has murdered his lord. I request that you chastise him." The Duke replied, "Report it to the chiefs of the three families." Confucius said, "Since I follow in the rear of the Grand Masters, I have no recourse but to report. My ruler has said, 'Report it to the chiefs of the three families,' and the three chiefs have said that there is nothing that can be done." Confucius said, "Since I follow in the rear of the Grand Masters, I had no recourse but to report." Zi Lu asked how to deal with a ruler. Confucius said, "If you have to oppose him, don't do it by deceit." The Master said, "The noble man penetrates that which is above. The inferior man penetrates that which is below." The Master said, "The ancient scholars studied for their own improvement. Modern scholars study to impress others." Q Bioyu sent a messenger to Confucius. Confucius sat down with him and asked him, saying, "What is your master like?" The messenger replied, "My master wants to decrease his faults, but is not able to do so." The messenger left, and Confucius said, "What a messenger!" The master said, "If you don't have an official position, you should not make plans for administration." Zhengzi said, "The noble man doesn't worry about those things which are outside of his control." The master said, "The noble man is humble in his speech, but superb in his actions." Gong was correcting people. Confucius said, Gong must be quite talented. I have no spare time to do this." The master said, "I don't worry about being unknown. I worry about my lack of ability." The master said, "If you don't try to anticipate deception, and you don't plan for your not being believed, yet are the first to be aware of these things, aren't you a worthy?" Wai Sheng Mu said to Confucius, "Why are you so busy running around from place to place? Is it not that you be a flatterer?" Confucius said, "I wouldn't dare to practice flattery. It is just that I despise stubbornness." The master said, "A really excellent horse is called such not simply because of its physical strength, but because of its character." Someone said, "What do you think of the saying, 'Repay harm with virtue'?" Confucius replied, "Then how will you repay virtue? Repay harm with justice, and repay virtue with virtue." The master said, "Ah, no one understands me." Gong said, "What do you mean, no one understands you?" Confucius said, "I have no resentment against heaven, no quarrel with men. I study from the bottom and penetrate to the top. Who understands me? Heaven does." Gong Bo Liao had said bad things about Zi Lu to Li Sun. Zi Fu Jingbo told Confucius about it, saying, "Li Sun is certainly being deceived by Gong Bo Liao, but I have enough power to drag his carcass out into the middle of the marketplace." Confucius said, "It is up to fate as to when the way is going to function, and when it isn't. What can Gong Bo Liao do about fate?" The master said, "A worthy becomes free of the world, then he becomes free of his land, then he becomes free from lust, then he becomes free from language." The master said, "The worthy avoid society. Next, they avoid service to a particular state. Next, they leave when confronted with a disrespectful attitude. Next, they leave to avoid abusive words. There were 7 who did this." Zi Lu was staying at Outer Stone Gate of the capital Khufu. The morning guard said, "Where are you from?" Zi Lu answered, "I came from the place where Confucius is staying." The guard said, "Ah, the one who tries to do what can't be done." Confucius was playing the jade chimes when in Wai. A man who passed by Confucius's door carrying a bucket said, "You really are determined. I can hear your playing of the chimes." After a bit he said, "How stubborn you are, playing like this. If no one understands, just stop. When the water is deep, just plunge in. When it's shallow, raise your skirt." Confucius said, "That would be decisive and not difficult." Zi Zhang said, "The book of history says, Gaozong stayed in mourning for 3 years without speaking. Why did he do this?" Confucius said, "It need not be Gaozong. The ancients were all like this. After the ruler died, all of the officials took orders from the minister of state for 3 years." The master said, If those in power love propriety, the people will be easy to manage. Zi Lu asked about the qualities of the noble man. Confucius said, "He cultivates himself by comforting others." Is that all? He cultivates himself by comforting everyone. Now, this is something that even Yao and Shun found difficult. Yuan Rang was waiting for the master in a sprawled-out position. Confucius said, "To be young and not act like a junior, to be mature and have nothing to pass on, to get old and not to die, a parasite." He hit him on the shins with his staff. A boy from the village of Kui was working as a messenger. Someone asked Confucius, "Is he developing?" Confucius said, "I can see that he likes to sit in grown-ups' places, and likes to be buddies with his elders, but he is not seeking to develop himself. He wants to grow up too quickly." Duke Ling of Wei asked Confucius about military tactics. Confucius said, "I know about the handling of ritual sacrifices, but I have not studied strategy." The next day, he and his disciples continued their travels. By the time they got to Chen, they had run out of provisions, and Zi Lu was obviously angry about it. He said, "Must the noble man suffer such dire straits?" Confucius said, "The noble man remains stable when in dire straits. The inferior man falls apart." Confucius said, "See, do you think that I am a person who studies widely and memorizes all of it?" Si replied, "It seems that way, but perhaps not." Confucius said, "The answer is no. I penetrate all with one." The master said, "You, those who understand virtue, are few and far between." The master said, "Cannot Shun be considered as one who governed without overreaching? What did he do? He permeated himself with courtesy, and correctly faced south." Zi Zhang asked about correct behavior. Confucius said, "If your speech is sincere and honest, and your way of carrying yourself is earnest and reverent, such behavior will work, even if you live among the southern and the northern barbarians. But if your speech is insincere and dishonest, and your way of carrying yourself is neither earnest nor reverent, then even if you live in your hometown, you will have problems." Zi Zhang wrote these words down on his sash. The master said, "The historian Yu was truly of straight character. When the government was just, he was like an arrow. When the government was unjust, he was like an arrow. Qiu Boyu is definitely a noble man. When the government is just, he will have a position in it. When the government is unjust, he can roll up his principles and keep them in his breast." The master said, "When a person should be spoken with, and you don't speak with them, you lose them. When a person shouldn't be spoken with, and you speak to them, you waste your words. The wise do not lose people, nor do they waste their words." The master said, "The earnest officer with a truly humane mind will not save his life if it requires him to sacrifice of his humaneness. He will even sacrifice himself to consummate his humaneness." Zi Gong asked about humaneness. Confucius said, "When a craftsman wants to do a nice piece of work, he will always sharpen his tools first. When you live in a certain district, get into the service of the most worthy officers, and seek friends among scholars who are steeped in humaneness." Yan Yuang asked about governing the state. Confucius said, "Use the calendar of Jia, ride in the state carriage of Yin, wear the ceremonial cap of Zhu. For music, play that of Shao and Wu. Get rid of the music of Zheng, keep distance from flatterers. The music of Zheng is lewd, and flatterers are dangerous." The master said, "If a man is not far-sighted, then trouble is impending." The master said, "Alas, it is over. I have not yet met someone who loves virtue as much as he loves sex." The master said, Did not Zhang Wangzhong steal the chances of others for a position? He knew the ability of Liu Xiaohui, but did not recommend him. The master said, "If a man doesn't continually question, 'What is it? What is it?' I don't know what I can do for him." The master said, "When a circle of people can spend the whole day together without their conversation ever touching on justice, and they like to act according to small-minded wisdom, what can be done?" The master said, "The noble man takes fairness as his substance. He actualizes it through propriety, demonstrates it in humility, develops it by trustworthiness. This is the noble man." The master said, "The noble man suffers from his own lack of ability, not from lack of recognition." The master said, "The noble man is concerned about the kind of reputation he will have after he passes away." The master said, "The noble man seeks within himself. The inferior man seeks within others." The master said, "The noble man is firm in his positions, but does not wrangle. He readily makes friends, but doesn't belong to a clique." The master said, "The noble man does not promote a man because of his words, and does not disregard the words because of the man." Zi Gong asked, "Is there a single concept that we can take as a guide for the actions of our whole life?" Confucius said, "What about reciprocity? What you don't like done to yourself, don't do to others." The master said, "Among people, who should I criticize, and who should I praise? If I praise someone, it is because I have had some way of testing him. The present common people are the same material with which the rulers of the 3 dynasties manifested the correct way." The master said, "I still look for the scribe who would leave some space in the text, and the man who would lend others his horse to ride. Nowadays, such niceties are gone." The master said, "Clever words disrupt virtue. Lack of patience in small matters leads to the disruption of great plans." The master said, "If everybody hates something, you better check into it. If everyone loves something, you better check into it." The master said, "It is the person who unfolds the way. It is not the way that unfolds the person." The master said, "To make a mistake and not correct it, this is a real mistake." The master said, "I have spent a whole day without eating, and a whole night without sleeping, in order to think. But I got nothing out of it. Thinking cannot compare with studying." The master said, "The noble man indulges in the way, and does not indulge in his stomach. Doesn't agriculture have the avoidance of starvation as its motivating factor, and study have enrichment as its motivating factor? The noble man is concerned about following the way, and is not concerned about avoiding poverty." The master said, "If your wisdom can grasp it, but your Ren is incapable of maintaining it, even though you have grasped it, you will certainly lose it. If your wisdom grasps it, and your Ren is sufficient to maintain it, but you do not manifest it, the people will not revere you. If your wisdom grasps it, your Ren is sufficient to maintain it, and you manifest it, but don't act according to propriety, you are still not perfect." The master said, "The noble man cannot act within the framework of lesser wisdom, but he can handle major affairs. The inferior man cannot handle major affairs, but he can act within the framework of lesser wisdom." The master said, "The people are more in awe of Ren than water or fire, but I have seen people tread on water or fire and die. I have never seen someone walk the path of Ren and die." The master said, "It is better to value Ren than to passively follow your teacher." The master said, "The noble man is precise, but not rigid." The master said, In serving your ruler, you should be concerned about your service to him first. Your compensation for the work should be a secondary matter. The Master said, in teaching people, there is no discrimination. The Master said, if your paths are different, you cannot make plans together. The Master said, speak enough to make the point, and then leave it at that. The Ji family was about to attack Zhuan Yu. Ran Yu and Ji Lu went to see Confucius, saying, the Ji family is getting ready to move against Zhuan Yu. Confucius said, Q, are you not at fault for this? Since ancient times, the former kings have maintained Zhuan Yu as the site of the sacrifice at Dongmeng Mountain. Moreover, it is located within our own country, and has served as the site of our national altars to the soil and grain. Why should it be attacked? Ran Yu said, it is our Lord who wants to do this. It is not we two ministers who want it. Confucius said, Q, there is a saying of Zhu Ren. The one who displays his power is the one who gets the position. Those who are not capable give up. If a minister does not support his lord when he is in danger, or support him when he is about to fall, then what use is he? Moreover, what you are saying is wrong. When a tiger or wild buffalo escapes from the cage, or the tortoiseshell and jade are destroyed in their cases, whose fault is this? Ran Yu said, now, Zhuan Yu is strongly fortified and close to Bi. If we don't seize it now, there will be trouble for the later generations. Confucius said, Q, the noble man does not like the one who declines to say what he really wants, and who must then make excuses later. I have heard that the heads of states or noble families do not worry over poverty, but instead over equal distribution of wealth. They do not fret over underpopulation, but whether the people are insecure. Now, if there is equality in distribution, there will be no poverty. If there is harmony in society, there will be no underpopulation. And if there is security, there will be no subversion. If it done like this, then if there are distant subjects who do not submit, you can attract them by cultivating refinement and virtue. Once they come, then you can give them security. Now you and Q, serving as advisors to your lord, have distant subjects who will not submit, and you are unable to attract them. The country is falling apart, and you cannot do anything to preserve it. Yet you now plan military action within your own state. I am afraid that the trouble of the descendants of Ji lies not in Zhuan Yu, but rather within the confines of our own court. The Master said, when the way prevails in the realm, then ritual, music, and military campaigns are all initiated by the emperor. When the way declines in the realm, then ritual, music, and military campaigns are initiated by the nobles. When these things are initiated by the nobles, the ruling house will usually lose its power within 10 generations. When these things are initiated by high ministers, the ruling house will usually lose its power within 5 generations. When they are initiated by the lower officers, the ruling house will lose its power within 3 generations. When the way prevails in the realm, the common people do not debate politics among themselves. Confucius said, it has been 5 generations since the assignment of emoluments left the ducal house. It has been 4 generations since the government came under control of the counselors. Therefore, the descendants of the 3 Huan have been in decline. The Master said, there are 3 kinds of friendship which are beneficial, and 3 kinds of friendship which are harmful. Friendship with the honest, friendship with the sincere, and friendship with the learned are all beneficial. Friendship with the deceptive, friendship with the unprincipled, and friendship with smooth talkers are harmful. The Master said, there are 3 kinds of enjoyment which are beneficial, and 3 kinds of enjoyment which are harmful. The enjoyment of cultivation in music and ritual, the enjoyment of speaking of the goodness of others, and the enjoyment of being surrounded by friends of good character are all beneficial. The enjoyment of arrogance, the enjoyment of dissipation, and the enjoyment of comfort are all harmful. The Master said, there are 3 common mistakes made by those who are of rank. 1. To speak when there is nothing to be said. This is imprudence. 2. To be silent when there is something to be said. This is deception. 3. To speak without paying attention to the expression on the person's face. This is called blindness. The Master said, the noble man is on guard against 3 things. 1. When he is a young man and his physical energies are not yet settled, he is on guard against lust. 2. When he is mature and his physical energy is solid, he is on guard against being drawn into a fight. 3. When he is old and his physical power is weakened, he is on guard not to cling to his attainments. The Master said, the noble man stands in awe of 3 things. 1. He is in awe of the decree of heaven. 2. He is in awe of great men. 3. He is in awe of the words of the sages. The inferior man does not know the decree of heaven. He takes great men lightly and laughs at the words of the sages. The Master said, those who are born knowing it are the best. Those who study to know it are next. Those who are limited and yet study are next. Those who are limited and do not even study are considered to be the lowest of the people. The Master said, there are 9 patterns which are awareness of the noble man. In seeing, he is aware of clarity. In listening, he is aware of acuity. In faces, he is aware of warmth. In the attitude he projects, he is aware of courtesy. In speech, sincerity. In service, reverence. In doubt, he is inclined to question. When angry, he is aware of the difficulties that may ensue. When he sees an opportunity for gain, he thinks of what would be just. Confucius cited the proverb, I regard goodness as something I haven't attained. I regard evil as my deep welling spring. And he said, I have seen this kind of person, and I have heard these words. But as for, I hide myself away in order to fathom my own will. I act with fairness to penetrate the way. I have heard this said, but I haven't seen this kind of person. Duke Qing of Qi had 1,000 teams of horses, but when he died, there was nothing for which the people could praise him. Bo Yi and Shu Qi died of starvation at the foot of Shuyang Mountain, and the people praise them till this day. What meaning can you glean from this? Chen Kang asked Bo Yu, have you heard anything from your father different than we disciples hear? Bo Yu replied, not yet. Once, when my father was standing by himself, I passed by the hall quickly, and he said, have you learned the Book of Odes yet? I said, not yet. So I went and studied the Book of Odes. On another day, the same scene occurred, and he asked me, have you learned the record of propriety yet? I said, not yet. He said, if you don't learn propriety, you will have no structure. So I went and studied the propriety. I have only heard these 2 things. Chen Kang left, elated, saying, I questioned on 1 thing and got 3. I learned about the poems, I learned about the propriety, and I learned that the noble man is not partial to his son. Yang Huo wanted to see Confucius, but Confucius would not see him. So he sent Confucius a piglet as a present. Confucius timed his visit of thanks when Yang Huo was not at home. They happened to meet on the road, and Yang said to Confucius, Come, I want to have a word with you. And he said, Hiding one's treasure in one's bosom, and letting one's country lose its way, can such a one be called truly humane? Confucius responded, No, he can't. Liking to be involved in public affairs, but always missing the timing, can he be called wise? No, he can't. The days and months slip away, and time is not on our side. Confucius said, "Okay, I'll take the job." The master said, "People are similar by nature, but through habitation become quite different from each other." Confucius said, "Only the most wise and the most foolish do not change." When the master went to Wu Cheng, he heard the sound of singing, accompanied by lutes. He laughed a bit and said, "Why would one need an ox cleaver to kill a chicken?" Zi replied, "In the past I heard you saying, 'If the noble man learns the way, he will care about people. If regular people learn the way, they become easy to employ.'" Confucius said, "My disciple, Yan, is right. What I said before was only a joke." Gongshang Furao, staging a rebellion from Bi against the Ji family, sent an invitation to Confucius, and the master wanted to go. Zi Lu, displeased with this, said, "Indeed, we may have nowhere to go, but why must we go to see Gongshang?" Confucius said, "If someone invites me, how could it be a total waste? If there is someone who is willing to make use of me, shall I not make his land an eastern Zhu?" Zi Zhang asked Confucius about fundamental human goodness. Confucius said, "If you can practice these 5 things with all the people, you can be called a fundamentally good person." Zi Zhang asked what they were. Confucius said, "Courtesy, generosity, honesty, persistence, and kindness. If you are courteous, you will not be disrespected. If you are generous, you will gain everything. If you are honest, people will rely on you. If you are persistent, you will get results. If you are kind, you can employ people." The master said, Have you heard the 6 phrases about the 6 distortions?" Yu answered that he hadn't. "Then stay a moment," Confucius said, "and I will tell you. If you love being kind to others, but don't like to study, then your kindness will be distorted into simplicity. If you love wisdom, but don't like to study, then your wisdom will be distorted into aimlessness. If you love trustworthiness, but don't like to study, then your trust will be distorted into harm. If you love candor, but don't like to study, your candor will be distorted into rudeness. If you love boldness, but don't like to study, your boldness will be distorted into unruliness. If you love persistence, but don't like to study, your persistence will be distorted into rashness." Bi invited Confucius to come and serve in his administration, and Confucius wanted to go. Zi Lu said, "Didn't I once hear you say that the noble man will not enter the place of one who has associated himself with evil? Bi has taken Zhongmu against its will, so how can the master go there?" Confucius said, "Indeed, I did say such a thing. But is it not said that if you polish something hard, it will not wear thin? And is it not said that if something is truly white, if you try to dye it black, it won't change color? Shall I be like a gourd that can be hung but never eaten?" The master said, "My disciples, why not study the Book of Odes? The Odes can uplift you, can make you observant, can help you to get along with people, can help you to use your anger. Applied near at hand, you can serve your father. Applied at a distance, you can serve your ruler. You can learn much about the names of birds, beasts, plants, and trees." Addressing Bo Yu, the master said, "Have you studied the Zhu Nan and the Shao Nan chapters? Isn't the one who does not learn the Zhu Nan and Shao Nan chapters just like someone who stands directly facing a wall?" The master said, "Ritual, they say, is nothing more than jade and silk. Music, they say, is it nothing more than bells and drums?" The master said, "If you show a tough face, but are weak inside, you are a miserable fellow, like a thief burrowing through the walls." The master said, "The conventional townsman is a thief of virtue." The master said, To apprehend the way and lecture on it before actualization is to throw away your accumulation of virtue. The Master said, "These lowlives, how can they ever serve a ruler? When they don't have something, they make themselves miserable in getting it. Once they get it, they go crazy about losing it. Once they are worried about losing it, there is nothing they won't do." The Master said, the ancients had 3 kinds of shortcomings, some aspects of which are now lost. The wild of antiquity were unbounded. The wild of today are dissipated. The proud of antiquity were gallant. The proud of today are hot-tempered. The simple-minded of antiquity were straightforward. The simple-minded of today are liars. The Master said, skillful speech and flattering expressions are seldom indicative of true goodness. The Master said, I hate purple because it steals the role of red. I hate the music of Zheng because it is confused with the classical music. The Master said, I wish I could avoid talking. Zigong said, Master, if you didn't speak, what would we disciples have to pass on? Confucius said, Does heaven speak? Yet the 4 seasons continue to change, and all things are born. Does heaven speak? Ru Bai wanted to see Confucius, but Confucius excused himself on the grounds of illness. When his messenger went to the door, the Master picked up his lute and began to sing so that Bai could hear him. Zai Wo asked, Isn't the 3-year mourning period too long? If the noble man does not exercise ritual for 3 years, then the rituals will certainly deteriorate. If music is not played for 3 years, it will certainly vitiate. Last year's grain is already gone, this year's grain has already sprouted, and the seasonal cycle for the use of wood, for producing fire by friction, has already passed through. 1 year is enough. Confucius said, Are you comfortable with eating good rice and wearing fine silk? Yes, I am fine with it. If you are okay with it, then go ahead and do it. When the noble man is in mourning, he cannot enjoy the taste of delicious food, cannot enjoy the sound of music, and cannot be comfortable in his own home, and therefore he won't do such a thing. Now, if you are comfortable with it, then do it. Zai Wo left. Confucius said, How inhumane Zai Wo is! It is only after 3 years that a child avoids his parents' embrace. The 3-year period of mourning is observed throughout society. Wasn't Zai Wo loved 3 years by his parents? The Master said, What can be done with a man who stuffs his face with food all day, without exercising his mind? He could at least play cards or chess or something. It would be better than nothing. Zi Lu said, Does the noble man esteem bravery? Confucius said, The noble man puts fairness first. If the noble man is brave without fairness, he will be rebellious. If the inferior man is brave without fairness, he will become an outlaw. Zigong asked, Does the noble man also have things that he hates? Confucius said, He does. He hates those who advertise the faults of others. He hates those who abide in lowliness and slander the great. He hates those who are bold without propriety. He hates those who are convinced of their own perfection and closed off to anything else. How about you? What do you hate? Zigong said, I hate those who take a little bit of clarity as wisdom. I hate those who take disobedience as courage. I hate those who take disclosing people's weak points to be straightforwardness. The Master said, Girls and inferior men are hard to get along with. If you get familiar with them, they lose their humility. If you are distant, they resent it. The Master said, One who has reached the age of 40 and is disliked will be disliked to the end. YZ left him. GZ was enslaved by him. Bigan admonished him and died for it. Confucius said, There were 3 good men in the yin. Hui Liujia was a chief criminal judge and was fired 3 times. Someone said, "Why don't you just leave, sir?" He said, "If I want to give justice in serving people, where can I go where this will not happen? If I can be satisfied with handing out injustice, why should I bother leaving the land of my parents?" Duke Jing of Qi was trying to decide what to do with Confucius. He said, "I can't treat him the way the Ji family did. I can employ him somewhere between the status of Ji or Meng." He said again, "I am already old. I can't use him." Confucius left. The people of Qi sent Lu a present of girl musicians. Ji Huan, the ruler of Lu, received them, and for 3 days did not hold court. Confucius left. Ji Yu, the madman of Chu, passed by Confucius, singing, "Phoenix, Phoenix, how your virtue has declined. Your past cannot be corrected, but your future is yet to come. Give up, give up. Those who involve themselves in government now will be in danger." Confucius jumped down, wanting to talk to him, but he ran away, so Confucius couldn't talk to him. Zhang Zhuo and Ji Ni were working together in the fields when Confucius was passing by. He sent Zi Lu to ask them where he could ford the river. Zhang Zhuo said, "Who is that holding the carriage?" Zi Lu said, "It is Confucius." Zhang said, "The Confucius of Lu?" "Yes." "Well, if that is the case, then he knows the ford." Zi Lu then asked Ji Ni, who said, "Who are you?" "I am Zi Lu." "The follower of this Confucius of Lu?" "Right." Ji said, "Disorder, disorder throughout the realm, and who can change it? Rather than following a she who avoids people, you should follow one who escapes from the world." With that, he went back to his hoeing and wouldn't stop. Zi Lu went back and reported this to Confucius. Confucius sighed, saying, "I can't form associations with the birds and the beasts, so if I don't associate with people, then who will I associate with? If the way prevailed in the realm, I would not try to change anything." Zi Lu, having fallen behind the group, met an old man carrying a basket on a pole. He asked him, "Have you seen my master?" The old man said, "Your 4 limbs have not toiled, and you can't distinguish among the 5 grains. Who is your master?" He planted his staff in the ground and began to weed. Zi Lu stood there with his arms folded. The old man had him stay overnight. He killed a chicken, prepared millet, and fed him, and then introduced him to his 2 sons. The next day Zi Lu left, and he told Confucius. The master said he is a recluse, and sent Zi Lu back to see him. When he arrived, the man was gone. Zi Lu said, "If you don't have a position in society, how can you practice fairness? If the relationship between young and old cannot be abandoned, how can the relationship between ruler and minister be abandoned? Desiring to keep his own purity, he disrupts the great bonds of society. The noble man practices his fairness from his place in society. When fairness is not being done, he is the one who is aware of it." Among men who have abandoned society are Bo Yi, Shu Qi, Yu Zhong, Yi Yi, Zhu Zhang, Hui Lu Xia, and Shao Lian. The master said, "Those who would not surrender their wills or humiliate themselves were Bo Yi and Shu Qi." Regarding Liu Jia Hui and Shao Lian, he said, "They surrendered their wills and humiliated themselves. Nonetheless, their words were based on solid principles, and they thought before acting. That is about all that can be said of them. Concerning Yu Zhong and Yi Yi, they left society, and in their seclusion cast off speech. They were pure in their personal activities, and their abandonment of official position was adjusted according to the circumstances. I am different than this. I have no shoulds or should-nots." The head musician, Ji, went to Qi. Gan, the musician for the 2nd meal, went to Chu. Liao, the musician for the 3rd meal, went to Kai. Kui, the musician for the 4th meal, went to Qin. The drummer, Fang Shu, went to the area of the Yellow River. Wu, the player of the spinning hand drum, went to the Han River. Yang, the assistant musician, and Jiang, the player of the stone chimes, went to the sea. The Duke of Zhu was talking to his son, the Duke of Lu. He said, "The noble man does not neglect his relatives, and does not let the high minister develop resentment about not being utilized. Therefore, he has never fired anyone unless there was a really good reason, and he does not seek to squeeze everything out of one man." There were 8 gentlemen in the Zhu: Bo Da, Bo Kuo, Zhong Tu, Zhong Hu, Shu Yi, Shu Jia, Ji Sui, and Ji Gua. Zi Zhang said, "The Shi who faced with danger can abandon his life, who seeing an opportunity for gain thinks of fairness, who at rituals is reverent, and who at funerals is sorrowful, he is worth something." Zi Zhang said, "Keeping one's virtue without extending it, trusting the way without enriching it, what can you gain, and what can you get rid of?" The disciples of Zi Jia were asked Zi Zhang about associations. Zi Zhang asked in response, "What does your teacher tell you?" One replied, "Associate with the capable, and keep away from the incapable." Zi Zhang said, "This is different from what I have heard. The noble man venerates the worthy, but accepts everyone. He praises the good, and pities the incapable. Now if I were a worthy, whom should I not accept? If I am unworthy, shall people cast me aside? How can you just push people away like this?" Zi Jia said, "If someone has just a small attainment of the way, it can be observed, but if he tries to extend it too far, it will lose its functioning. Therefore, the noble man does not do this." Zi Jia said, "Someone who is aware every day of what he lacks, and every month does not forget what he has developed, can be called a lover of learning." Zi Jia said, "Studying widely and thickening your will, questioning earnestly and reflecting on things at hand, Ren lies in this." Zi Jia said, "The artisans stay in their shops in order to accomplish their works. The noble man studies in order to actualize his way." Zi Jia said, "The inferior man always glosses over his errors." Zi Jia said, "The noble man has 3 appearances. From afar he appears majestic. Close up he seems warm. Listening to his speech he seems polished." Zi Jia said, "After the ruler has the trust of the people, they will toil for him. If he doesn't have their trust, they will regard him as oppressive. Only after gaining his trust will they criticize him openly. If he doesn't trust them, he will take their criticism as backstabbing." Zi Jia said, "As long as you don't transgress the norm of great virtue, you may utilize small virtues freely." Zi Yu said, "The disciples of Zi Jia can clean the floor, respond to questions, and come forward and retire. But these are trivial matters. When it comes to the essentials, they are lost. Why is it so?" Zi Jia, hearing of it, said, "What? Isn't this a bit of an exaggeration? In the way of the noble man, those who advance first are summoned, and those who are late fall away. It is like the various plants that are categorized by their species. How can the way of the noble man be deceptive? Who but a sage can both take the initiative and bring matters to their completion?" Zi Jia said, "After you have accomplished your job, then study. After you have accomplished your studies, then get a job." Zi Lu said, "When mourning has expended itself in grief, it should end." Zi Lu said, "My friend Zhang can handle difficulty, but is not yet perfect in Ren." Sang Zi said, "How imposing Zhang is! It is difficult to practice Ren with him." Sang Zi said, "I have heard this from our master. If a man has not yet fully experienced himself, he will when his parents die." Sengzi said, I heard our master say, in other matters the filial piety of Ming Zhong was nothing special, but his running his government without changing his father's ministers or systems, this was quite difficult. Yang Fu, having been appointed Minister of Justice by the Meng clan, consulted with Sengzi. Tseng said, when those in power lose their sense of justice, the people will scatter from them, and it will be a long time before they return. When you are aware of their suffering, then you should be sorrowful, never joyful. Zigong said, Zhu could not really have been that bad. Therefore the noble man dislikes residing in the lower reaches, where all the evil of the world accumulates. Zigong said, the faults of the noble man are like the eclipses of the sun and moon. Everyone sees them, but when he corrects them, everyone looks up to him. Gong Shengchao of Wei asked Zigong, from whom did Confucius get his learning? Zigong said, the way of King Wen and King Wu has not yet sunk into the ground. The worthies have assimilated the major points, and the less than worthy have assimilated the minor points. There is no place where the way of Wen and Wu does not exist, so how could the master not learn it? Why would he need to get it from a certain teacher? Shushan Wushu, addressing the major officers of his court, said, Zigong is superior to Confucius. Zifu Jingbo told this to Zigong, who commented, let me use a simile of a castle and its wall. My wall is only shoulder high, which you may look over and see the desirables that lie inside. My master's wall is several tens of feet higher, and if you can't find the door and enter by it, you will not see the beauty of its ancestral temple, nor the splendor of its 100 officers. Those who find the door are few indeed. Are not my master's words even more difficult to grasp? Shushan Wushu's disparaged Confucius. Zigong said, it is ridiculous talking this way. Confucius cannot be slandered. The virtue of other men is like a small hill, which can be climbed over. Confucius is like the sun and the moon. There is no way they can be climbed over. Even if you want to cut yourself off from the sun and the moon, how can you hurt them? It is easy to see that Wushu does not know value. Chen Ziqin addresses Zigong, saying, you are too humble. How could Zhong Ni be more worthy than you? Zigong said, by a single word the noble man shows his intelligence, and by a single word he shows his ignorance. Hence, one must be careful when choosing one's words. The level of the master cannot be reached, just as the heavens cannot be ascended to using a stairway. If our master had attained control of the state, or clan, it would have been as it is said. By his establishment they took their positions. When he led, they followed. Due to his gentleness, they came. When he motivated them, they worked in harmony. In life he was glorious. In death he is mourned. Who could attain to such a level? Yao said, Ah, Shun, the heavenly succession has fallen on you. Hold firm to the center. If the whole realm falls into dire straits, the heavenly stipend will disappear forever. Shun similarly instructed Yu. Tang said, I, the inconsequential Lu, dare to sacrifice the black bull, and dare to report to the illustrious Lord. When a crime is done, I will not dare to pardon it. I will cover up for your servants, but leave the decision up to your discretion. When I am guilty of a fault, I will not blame it on all the people, and they are at fault. I will take responsibility myself. Zhu had great gifts, which he used to enrich good men. Although he was surrounded by close relatives, they were not treated on a par equal with the good. If there are faults among the officials, I will take the blame myself. Be careful with weights and measures, scrutinize well the legal code, and restore offices that have fallen into disuse. Then all the lands in the 4 directions will be well governed. Raise up the failed states, re-establish broken lineages, empower those who have avoided service, and all the common people in the realm will put their trust in you. Place value on the common people, food, mourning for the dead, and ritual sacrifice. If you are generous, you will gain the hearts of the people. If you are trustworthy, they will rely on you. If you are diligent, you will get results. If you are fair, they will be happy. Zi Zhang asked Confucius, saying, "How should one best handle the affairs of government?" The master said, "There are 5 points of excellence to be respected, and 4 bad points to be avoided. If you can follow these, you can handle the affairs of government." Zi Zhang asked, "What are the 5 points of excellence?" The master said, "The noble man is generous without being wasteful, works hard without resentment, desires without being avaricious, is proud without being arrogant, strict without being severe." Zi Zhang said, "What does it mean to be generous without being wasteful?" The master said, "If you see a way to bring benefit to the common people, and you carry it out, is this not being generous without being wasteful? If you select the matters where it is appropriate to work, and have people work hard at them, who will be resentful? If you desire goodness and attain it, where will there be greed? Whether dealing with the many or the few, the young or the old, the noble man does not dare to be conceited. Is this not indeed the meaning of being proud, but not being arrogant? The noble man, straightening his robe and cap, is respectful in his gaze. He is severe in the gazes of the people, yet is in awe of them. Is this not the meaning of being strict without being severe?" Zi Zhang said, "What are the 4 bad points?" The master said, "To execute someone without explaining what they did wrong is cruelty. To expect achievements without admonishment is tyrannical. To be late in giving orders, yet expecting punctuality, is injurious. To be stingy in bestowing on people their due remuneration is petty officiousness." The master said, "If you do not understand destiny, there is no way you will be regarded as a noble man. If you do not understand propriety, there is no way for you to be established. If you do not understand words, there is no way for you to understand people."